We firmly believe that if you're not expanding, you're retracting. There's no coasting and staying stagnant. Like if you're stagnant, you're actually going backwards. So I think first and foremost, we had to get staff who shared that value in some way. Because if someone kind of doesn't really sort of value sort of development, it's pretty difficult to press that on them. And for some people, it's just not one of their things in that stage of where they are in life.
Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. In each episode, we bring together leaders from optometry, optical dispensing, and business to share insights, practical strategies, and the latest developments shaping independent practice today. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore how innovation, collaboration, and smart business thinking can drive growth, enhance patient care, and strengthen the future of independent optometry. Whether you're a student, an early career professional, or an established practice owner, The Focused View is your go-to source for knowledge, inspiration, and connection. The Focused View is brought to you by Vision Connection, supporting independent eye care professionals across Australia through collaboration, education, and business growth. By working closely with leading suppliers and industry partners, Vision Connection offers unique opportunities that help independents stand out and succeed. To find out more, visit their website, visionconnection.com.au.
You touch on something there, as the business owner, and that's something that I've come to learn across, say, the businesses that I'm working across as well. No one can be like you, and you can't have that expectation. And so it's almost like you think it comes so naturally to yourself, and therefore, why doesn't everyone just get it? So it's a lot of times it's like you got to stand back. So when it comes to that, and knowing that you've got it covered from the clinical point of view, from the patient care point of view, from the kicking goals and the metrics and all that sort of things, you've got it. How do you approach staff development in that context, knowing that they're probably obviously not like you and they're not going to see things the way that you see that, but by doing it, I guess, in a productive and a successful way?
Yeah. So first and foremost, again, with reciprocation, one of our other sort of core philosophies, fundamental values, and that's not just at the practice, it's also, Sharon and I have also in life is personal and professional development. So we firmly believe that if you're not expanding, you're retracting. Yeah. There's no coasting and staying stagnant. Like if you're stagnant, you're actually going backwards. So I think first and foremost, we had to get staff who shared that value in some way. Because if someone kind of doesn't really sort of value sort of development, it's pretty difficult to press that on them. And for some people, it's just not one of their things in that stage of where they are in life. So I think it's a matter of getting people who are interested in being better versions of themselves, doing better, and not doing better for, one thing like, okay, I'll be better because I want more money, because that's not long lived. Like you can't sustain that over years and years and years. That's usually very, very short term. It needs to be much more deeper than that, like someone who wants to feel better and, feel like they're more valued and they're more proud of themselves, because who they are for themselves is they know that they are a better version of themselves today than they were 6 months ago for themselves. And a lot of that development that you do is carried out through your life. So you can't be at work and be developing and being amazing and then go into your personal life and be stagnant and chilled. Like whatever we do, we're spending 40 hours a week at work, right? So whatever we're kind of developing in work, we always talk to our staff about, hey, like this isn't just for you to win at work. Like use this stuff and win in your lives. Like we want you winning outside of work as well. And that's, it's all encompassing. You can't separate the two. So first of all, got to get the right people. Got to get people who are coachable, who are willing to learn and develop and want that. And that in itself is huge, like that's really tricky. And right. It is. And I really thank, my wife, Sharon, for finding the staff I've got, because, she's the one who tailored our job ad to get that person. And we've got two amazing staff who love developing and prove that they do that even outside of the work area. In terms of kind of ongoing development, we do it in a couple of different ways. So I think developing is ongoing. Like it's every day, all day, every day. So that can look like little chats, little like impromptu, sort of unofficial, just kind of like chit chats with the group about interactions, about conversations. It's not always when there's a breakdown as well. It's not when something's gone wrong and that's when you talk about it. Sometimes it's about sharing about something that happened where, it was a win or it was unexpected or something that hasn't gone to plan or something that's gone really well. Like it's about sharing and communicating a lot about those things as they come up. Because I think what a lot of business owners do is they go, oh yeah, well, we better talk about that. And they sort of note it down. Business owners doing it later, it's never going to happen. Like you're too busy. We've got too many other things. You're not 3 days later going to go, hey, that conversation you had on the phone with blah, 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 blah. And also it's not fresh, particularly for us as business owners, we go, oh, that's something I really want to talk about. That's important. For staff, they're gorgeous, but like they've got different names. They're not business owners. So they've moved on. That was 2 days ago. They're like, what conversation? I don't recall what you were talking about. So I think, doing it regularly, ongoing is really important. We also have every 6 months, we do a full day sort of like staff development training. The last few times we've actually done it with Influential U. So Influential U is they're the leaders in specialized sort of business development, business professional development, American-based company that Sharon and I have studied on and off with for over a decade. And I'm sure we'll touch on that later. And then I think a lot of things, so a big area then is, okay, well, people do often go to do staff training, but then we also have to make a conscious effort to implement that and practice that ongoing afterwards. So often what happens, and again, I've been to so many conferences, I've been to ProVision, I've been to so many things where there's all this excitement of like, wow, there's these new philosophies and new concepts and oh yeah. And then, you go and you sort of, pumped on Monday and then by Thursday, it's sort of like BAU, business as usual. And that's like top down, that's the captains of the ship, the leaders, the business owners that have to make the effort of having that at the forefront of everyone's mind and encouraging and applying it and practicing it. So we talk a lot about development as practice. And with practice, you get it wrong. But at the end of the day, the only way you get better at something is you practice it, you apply it more. And then when you apply it more and more and more, it becomes consciously, it becomes more subconscious and it becomes more of sort of a second nature thing. So we do sort of, ongoing, but we also kind of have these block, training days as well.
Yeah. And if I guess look at it from another aspect in terms of, because I always think when you're looking at a particular problem, you can look at what's really positive and how to be positive, but also then don't want to be negative. So how do you avoid doing that? And I guess in that spirit, what do you think most practice owners get wrong when it comes to motivating their team or developing their team? And I guess for the purpose of, making sure that these aren't things that we are doing, if that makes sense.
I think, and I'll go on from what I just was talking about, which is I think the structure or the intentionality or the emphasis or the effort of continually practicing and applying what you've learned is the key. As an employee, I've been to so many training days where it's all great and it's literally gone. There's no sort of follow-up continuity of implementing those things in practice. And the biggest thing is it's hard. Like it's really time consuming. Like as a clinician, if you're already practicing, you're already seeing patients, you're already managing the business side of things, you've got everyday practice stuff that you're dealing with. On top of that, you then are going, hey, look, we're also going to develop and implement this new way of thinking or this new way of approaching problems or this new way of interacting or this, like it is time consuming. And I think because of that, people don't make the effort or they don't make time for it. And so it means that you do all of the foundational stuff, which is you go to the workshop or you go learn it, and it's basically useless because, theory is only as good as applying it. And applying it you need to do over time for it to become sort of much more natural. So I think that is key, like for a lot of business owners. And I would say just keep it simple, like if you've learned 20 new things, awesome. Just concentrate on one.
Yeah, spot on.
Just concentrate on one and, set your staff up to win, which is, if you give them 5, they're not going to do 5 and you're just going to get annoyed. But also set yourself up to win. If you implement 5, you've also got to manage those 5 things over time on top of everything else. Whereas if you just go, great, we're going to concentrate out of everything. This is the one that I think will make the biggest difference to my business. Let's do this. Let's get it in. And once that's in, I'm going to then implement the second thing. And so there is a conscious intentionality effort to follow up that is happening. I think also a lot of business owners conflate motivation and goals. So I've been at a lot of practices where they go, their motivation looks like, all right, this month, we've got to do 130,000, the budget's 130,000 this month. And so, we've got to get patients in and we've got to da-da-da-da-da, and we've got to blah, 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 and you've got to da-da-da, and blah, blah. And that's all the aim. That's all the goals. That's the practice goal. And that is for a business owner, that is the result that they're after, but that's not motivation. That's just articulating the end game, where we're heading. And so I think that's something to be aware of and distinguish. I think also in terms of motivation, I think every person is different. So I think what motivates one staff member, what motivates another staff member is different as well. So you've got to get to know your staff, what makes them tick, what makes them, what's their drive. Human beings, we're all different, and that's a good thing. It means that we all bring different things to the table, but it does mean that, you do have to kind of tailor that. I mean, look, money talks. Like money is always something that we all share, but money can't be the only thing, because then you get people who only think about money and then they actually don't care about the patient. So it actually doesn't work long term. So there is that next level of, hey, what motivates this individual? And the other thing too is, and it could be something as simple as, they want to have more time. Their motivation is that over time they want to be more efficient, so that, hey, maybe they could leave an hour earlier but still get the same work done. Like it could be something different. And then the other thing too is, what motivates someone today is most likely or maybe different to what motivates them in 6 months or 12 months. So people are at different stages in their lives, and so just being aware of again, what makes your staff tick, and reassessing and re-looking at that over time. And then I think every time you add another staff member, dynamics change and things can change. So it's worth just reassessing,
Cool. You mentioned money talks, and I guess, it to some capacity it does. Remuneration, I guess, is a part of, your culture and your team and all that sort of thing is an important part. Obviously, and well, not obviously, it sounds like you've got some type of structured incentive or bonus system, and not obviously disclosing necessarily what that is, but what are some of the key, components for yourself when you were creating it? And with Sharon in mind, obviously, what did you come to the conclusion of as being important and relative to at least tick that off the list to ensure that it had some meaning and it did work in a positive way, I guess?
Yes, yeah. And it did work in a positive way is a great way to put it. Because if you do implement it, it can actually backfire, right? So it can actually unmotivate and make staff resentful. I think fundamentally with any form of sort of KPIs and bonus structures, first and foremost, you've got to have aims for the business. So if you don't know what you want out of the business and where it's heading, it's very, very difficult to offer very accurate and very powerful bonus incentives. So, we have 6 monthly, 12 monthly, like month by month goals. And those goals they're not just revenue, they're revenue, split up into consultations, contact lenses, frame lenses, sundries. We've got goals for cost of goods sold with all of those sorts of things. We've got goals for expenses. That's month by month over the next 12 months. And then we also sort of plan out sort of year by year over 5 years as well. So that's looking at, changes in staff, changes in equipment, renovations. Obviously things change, but it's that aim of kind of, hey, where do you want to be heading? Because when you've got that aim in mind, then you're thinking, okay, well, that's kind of where I want to get. I'm gonna support the staff and the business to get those, monthly KPIs, or to get those practice goals. But then anything more than that, if we're stretching and we're doing more than that, then we really want everyone to win more as well. So we already pay really, really well, but we ask a lot from our staff. But then if they're willing to stretch, if they're willing to do more, then again, the practice wins and we want them to win as well. So I think first and foremost, you've got to have clear aims in mind. The second thing is, I think bonuses have to be achievable. So I've rented a practice before where they've got, we had this new machine, and I was an employee, and type A high achiever. Like, the business owner had done 6 scans in a month. As soon as we got the machine, like, I had done something like 35 or 30, 36, 37 scans in a month. And the aim for the following month was like, all right, now I want you to do 60.
Right.
And it's like, come on, dude. Like, that it's just a little bit far-fetched. It's not really achievable. It's not in SACs. And he was an amazing guy, because we actually talked about it. And I said, what's the thinking behind it? And he goes, oh, look, if we do, if I say do 60 and you ain't, reach for the stars and you don't quite get there, and you still do 50, you're still doing awesome. And I said, yeah, you're happy, but I'm resentful, because, like, you've set a goal that's just too hard for me to actually achieve, that even when I have kicked an awesome goal, there's not going to be the acknowledgement for it. And another practice I worked for, the way they did their monthly bonuses was crazy. It was like, okay, well, last month we did 100K, but the target was 150. Last year, this month, the target's going to be, 200. And it's like, we're clearly doing significantly less than your target month by month. So, but then they just kind of set the bar really high with this thing of like, well, if you aim up there, even if you don't quite get there, you're going to still do 150 instead of 200. So I think it being achievable is really, really important, because you want them to win. You want them to get it. Because, like, when you get the bonus and you get it, you want it again. And also, I think if the bonus is too far-fetched, or it's too much of a stretch, and staff go for it and they don't get it, they get a bit resentful, because they're not silly. If you've done an extra, 20,000 in revenue, but they don't get anything over and above the bonus, and they get nothing for it, it's sort of like, the staff know there's a subconscious kind of resentment that does build up, right? Like, you don't want to mess with people's money. So I think it being achievable is really important. But the only way for it to be a stretch is to know your aims. So how do you stretch the staff a little bit more? So let's say, hey, I'm just using round numbers, like, hey, I want the practice to do 100K. Like, that would be amazing for the month. 100K would be amazing. And I would be on track with my goals. Like, so if we do 110, really, I'm happy if out of that $10,000, my 2 front staff members each get $1,000, because practice is already winning, because we hit the budget. The staff have stretched, so the practice is winning more. But that stretch is, they've worked to get it. So if I give them a bit of it, they're going to feel valued, and they're going to feel that there's reciprocation.
Yeah.
But if you've put the budget at 150 and the practice does 100, so that's what I mean by you've got to know your practice aims to know how much you can stretch, because you don't want to stretch too far, because then it's not achievable. And you don't want it to be too easy, because then as the business owner, you get resentful. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, like this is just easy extra money for them, and the business hasn't actually got what it needs.
Yes, it can't be too easy and it can't be too hard. It's got to be somewhere in there.
Correct. And that's very difficult. But the best way to find that spot is is more about knowing your practice and knowing where you're heading. Mm-hmm. because again, it's a bonus, right? Like we say to the staff, it's a bonus. So you're paid to be superstars. The bonus is for the stretch. The bonus isn't to be superstars. You're paid to be superstars. The bonus is the stretch. The other thing too is the bonus, I think, needs to be like sizable.
Yeah.
It's not small. I know a practice where Christmas practice bonus, they all shared a $500 voucher, between 8 people. I mean, over Christmas at that's just a bit of a more of a token. So, my staff, my front 2 staff last calendar year earned almost $7,000 on top of their salary over the whole year. Okay. And my optom has a different structure. He's on a sort of a quarterly bonus, and he earned even more as well. So I think it has to be something worthwhile going for. Yeah. So achievable, worthwhile, but also win-win for the practice. The practice can't suffer for it, but the practice also, that it needs to be achievable.
So if we look at things holistically now when it comes to leadership, team culture, how would you summarize and how would you define good leadership in the context of independent optometry business?
Yeah, I think it's creating an environment for your staff to win. So that can look physical, mental, making sure it's a nice space, making sure processes are there, making sure there's consistency with things so that everyone feels like, they're valued. So I think it's creating the right environment for your team to win. But I think the biggest thing is also leading by example. I think a lot of business owners sort of do the whole, hey, do as I say, not as I do. And we often sort of go, look, I'm juggling a lot more things, so I maybe cut corners or I may not do that. And you just can't. As a leader, you have to lead by example. You have to be the first one willing to, have humility or reflect or, show professional personal development. Yeah, really have to be on the court and lead by example.
I think that was all great. That was fantastic and a lot to take out of all of that. And we look more at the business philosophy that I guess you've adopted, and I guess that growth mentality that you seem to have and that you're incorporating through the practice. You mentioned earlier that you've studied with Influential You. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, and how has the learnings that you've come across in that environment shaped the way you run the practice?
Yeah. So look, Influential You they're a American-based company, but they're basically the global leaders in what they call transactional intelligence. So what it is it's a fundamental philosophy, and again, I've already touched on it, that us as human beings, we have to transact with each other to be able to be happy and not just survive, but now thrive. And that transaction is not in a sort of a apathetic, monetary aspect. It's more mutually beneficial exchanges, ethical exchanges. So it's not always money. It can be help. It can be a whole bunch of things. So their fundamental tenet is that, hey, we're here together. And the best way for us to win is for us to actually have these mutually beneficial exchanges that we do for different things over time so that we're all kind of winning together. So let's say if I needed something for whatever reason and I needed it from you, I've got a vested interest in knowing what you need, because if there's somehow I can help you out and you can help me out, we both win. And so they take that philosophy, mostly around business. But again, if you've got that philosophy in business, you kind of tend to have that philosophy outside of business as well. And they teach about how fundamentally as individuals, like our personality tends to behave a certain way in those interactions, those transactions. And so sometimes in those transactions, our personality, the way we inherently or naturally want to behave in those interactions, might mean that we aren't able to get what we need. We may not be able to be as successful in those transactions. We may not be able to really talk about sort of articulate what we wanted correctly, or may not got what we got, not maybe received what we needed, or weren't able to help the other person as we promised. So they get you to sort of look at, hey, first and foremost, you learn a little bit about this philosophy of, hey, let's get into these, like life is all about these mutually beneficial exchanges. And if you're better at these mutually beneficial exchanges, then you're going to be happier. and what is it about you that where you can be more efficient, more effective in these exchanges. And so you can hear that that kind of philosophy is foundational for everything we do. So when you ask like, how has it sort of shaped your practice? I would say it shapes every aspect of our practice, including our lives as well. Yeah.
And actually, how did you come across it? Like, was it something that you just stumbled upon, or did someone point you to it? It seems
so. Look, Sharon in a previous life used to actually do a lot of high level professional development. She actually used to lead professional development programs. Yeah, incredible woman. And what actually ended up happening is a colleague of hers was actually moved and ended up joining Influential You as a key person in there. And he's the one who talked to us about it. And then literally like we were hooked and have continued to study with them. Yeah.
It sounds like a really good way of thinking. And I think, at the very least, people check it out. It might be something of value to them, because it sounds like it's a pretty good little course there. When it comes to, I guess, you focusing on the business and the growth, and we understand, obviously, we've come to learn your philosophies in some capacity, and obviously the specializations and how you've created a point of difference. How do you make decisions about where you invest your time, I guess, with regards to the team, the energy that's needed, and the resources that you can contribute? Because, what I love about this conversation is, obviously you've got a really successful independent optometry practice, but a lot of things we're talking about here, it's a little bit above that. We're not talking about the specifics within the store and, what you're doing specifically. It's more about a mindset and a mentality. So, as the leader of the business, as the owner of the business, how do you make the decisions as to what to spend your time on and where to spend it?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to practice aims.
Right.
So, with and a lot of this going back to goals is part of the study with Influential You. And it was a big thing for me, because I'm very much happy to kind of be like, everything's going good and like, build and, just keep working and do better without kind of a clear goalpost on sort of, hey, where am I heading, or where do I want to get to? And having that kind of that pole in the sand to be able to kind of aim towards does make decision making much easier, because in any moment you can see with whatever goals you have, that is how you then choose to spend your time. What do you accept? What do you decline? What are you working on? Because you kind of know where you're heading. So I think it is tricky, and I think it's a matter of practice aims and then working out the best return on investment. So if I want to head that way, what is, again, simplifying it, what is the thing I can work on that is going to give me the biggest return on investment, the biggest change? And when I say return on investment, I don't mean monetarily, I mean in terms of heading towards that goal. What is going to make the biggest difference, the biggest bang for buck in regards to me heading that way right now? And that's where I put more of my energy, and then reassessing that over time. And then I've got processes in place. So I've got, my weekly meeting with my practice manager. I've got Drew Wang, my optometrist. He also updates me on certain things every month, and he does some meetings for me as well. So again, it's a team effort to make sure that the information is being passed and collated as efficiently as possible, so that I can then go, okay, well, this is where we want to head. What is it that we need to work on? And that might be in kind of two sort of timeframes. So that might be over the next couple of months. And then the next time frame, that might be the next 6 to 12 months, because I tend to work on sort of those two sort of time frames.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. That you did at the beginning of the year. I mean, and obviously, you're saying that you're doing it sort of every 6 months, I guess, there or thereabouts.
Yeah, so Sharon and I do a pretty intense sort of reassess and recreate every 6 months.
Right.
But every month there is a whole bunch of like stats that are updated from both my optometrist and my practice manager in sort of spreadsheets. So I'm able to very quickly analyze sort of where things are. And I've got it now, so it's a little bit more streamlined, so that when stats get put in, there's calculations and equations, so that it's much more efficient for me to get the information I need, so that I can assess it and I can move on.
And are you using Optomate or Sunix or a practice?
Do you know what? We're actually using Sunix. So look, I've used them both, and I think they're both got pros and cons. Yeah. And I think from a user interface point of view, I actually preferred Optomate. I think it's but with how long we've had Sunix for decades and decades and decades, it's a big thing to move. that most of the analysis is done not through, it's getting the data out of the practice management system and then it going into, shared like Google Sheets or.
So you're exporting the data and you've created your own, I guess, metrics and methods of analysis that you're using.
Correct.
And how did you know to create that? And is that a Sharon initiative, I guess, as well? Or how can people get guidance on what to do in that instance? Where did that come from your point of view?
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely like Sharon's done a lot. That's a huge area of Sharon. She's phenomenal at analysis and analytical assessments. A bit of it also is influential you. So they do, there is that importance of objective, unemotional assessment. Sure. So, that blend of creativity and thinking blended with reality and objectivity, kind of need that good blend of both. I'm also just a bit, I don't know if it's a guy thing or because I'm a bit of a nerd. So I like numbers. I like figures, I like winning. So, if you can see numbers, if you can see goals that are actual numbers, it gives you a little bit more, I guess, endorphin or dopamine of like hitting those numbers. Sure. And it's interesting, I have ummed about whether or not I would do some business development for independent practices where, I would do some consulting and actually be able to help people with these sorts of things. The hardest part is that, especially independent optometry, is that it is unique for the practice. So like my KPIs, my spreadsheets, especially contact lens practice, we do 30% consultation, 35% contact lenses, and we still do a lot of glasses, but like that's our revenue is going to look very different to someone else. So those KPIs, those spreadsheets do need to be tweaked for the individual practice.
Yeah, and it speaks to one of the advantages of being independent, or maybe disadvantages too. It's what makes independence is independence. And so we're a little bit unique, and it's not, you can't do the cookie cutter, here it is, use it. It's more like, well, this is what's important to me. These are my goals. These are my aspirations. This is what I'm looking for. This is the stage of life, I'm at and we're at as business owners. And so it's not like a one size fits all. And so I think, that totally makes sense. But if it's okay, can you disclose or, mention what are some of the general metrics that you look to or you'd be wanting to analyze with regards to, how the business is performing or when you're setting your goals? Some of the general ones that we see, are things like conversion rates and, new client retention or new client rates, and retention rates and multiple pair sales and all that sort of stuff. But are there anything, or is there anything there that you've learned over the years that's a little bit maybe bespoke or different or unique that is important to you?
So look, one of the things I never have tracked is conversion rates. Okay. I think it's too broad and it's not as powerful as, I think it's just easy to look at it, but I don't think it's not. Yeah. So I just think that's interesting. When you said that, I was like, oh yeah, it's something I've never done. So for example, when we were building, when Drew joined me and we were building his book, I had a KPI for the staff for new patient bookings. Okay. So literally after a certain amount of new patients a month, every single patient that a new patient was booked in, the staff each got $50. Okay. Right. So again, there's that incentive. So again, it's not just money. Like the aim at the time was we need to get people in with him. And so that's where the focus was. Right. So that was a KPI, or that was something that we monitored and they were bonused on. Other times it can be things like multiple, I think multiple pairs is a good one as well, because often with multiple pairs, if you look at when multiple pairs go up, generally overall sales go up, generally frame stock sales go up. So you don't bother about frame stock sales or you just concentrate on multiple pairs. You want the KPI to be super simple. I understand. And you want to know that if multiple pairs goes from here to here, it goes up. Yeah. You know what the ramifications are going to be, what the results going to be for the business. So I think multiple pairs is another one. So there's a few different ones depending on what stage I'm at. There's always the aim. There's always a budget to kind of aim for, but that budget is not the action I want them thinking of, because it's much easier for example, for me to go, hey, the aim for the next 6 months is to book new patients in with Drew, and that's what you're going to be bonused on. And so they concentrate on that action. It's not a result. It's something that physically they can physically make a difference to themselves.
It's almost like a behavioral change you're trying to encourage there.
Correct. Yeah. And so in that moment when they're on the phone, they're being their best selves because there is this other sort of added aim or added sort of, so they can control that. I think conversions are difficult because there is a lot of conversions that is related to the type of patient that's in, the type of practice you are, and also a lot of acceptance from the patient. Whereas if really what you're trying to do is I'm just making this up now, like if you want your optometrist to bill more, like create more billing, then maybe you do something more around the billing aspect and then give the optometrist and also bonus them on it, but then give them the freedom on how that looks, because an optometrist could actually do a little bit more. They could go to their local GPs and have like referrals for dry eyes, and so their billing goes up. So because at the end of the day, it's not the conversion that practice owners want. It's just that they want to sell more, like to move stock and to earn more money. And I think conversions, and maybe it's also in our industry, because conversions, whenever you think about conversions, there's also a negative connotation. The corporates kind of have pushed that a lot. Totally. So I think even maybe there's bad juju just around the word, and that has an impact on how productive and how successful you are in that moment.
It goes almost like, it's a little bit like the whole concept of, in our industry, like sales is almost like a dirty word, and we don't want to think of ourselves as selling, or it's more we're providing the solution ultimately. And I think it's all pivoted on that. We're providing a solution that the patient, obviously, that can help the patient experience life, and you've alluded to some of those benefits, I guess, early on with the experiences that your patients have for the first time when they're putting on a pair of contact lenses, and it's like, whoa, what's happening over here? Then that makes, I guess, a lot of sense. And if I was to, I guess, summarize it from the point of view of, what you've mentioned, it's more about aligned with your goals. So the actual KPIs and the metrics that you're looking for are not necessarily generalistic in nature. It's like, well, what are your goals for the next 6 months, for example? And once we identify what the goals are, or you have for your practice, it's like, well, because we're going to identify this is a challenge or this is the goal, let's now create metrics that are going to be relative to that. And that makes total sense.
And you could even go a step back and go, okay, well, if you're going to start differentiating or creating value to differentiate yourself away from refraction-based things, then that's kind of, all right, well, that's the next level up. So, okay, well, that's kind of what we're going to do. Then what are the aims to kind of achieve that? And then with those goals, where are we heading? What kind of KPIs? Where do we concentrate? Where do we concentrate the bonusing? Where do we concentrate the professional development? Because that's also where you would want to support your staff more, so that so all of a sudden, because you've got where you're heading, you can actually all be on board with that.
All right. If you're looking back on all of this as well, in terms of these things that we've discussed, can you take me to one of the biggest aha moments that you've had as a business owner? Something that's changed the way that you operate, that you lead. What was one of those moments where you've just sort of in reflection gone, and it could have happened at the very time that it occurred, but it could have also happened in reflection when you've been thinking about things, going, oh, that was powerful. And I learned a lot out of that.
Yeah, look, I probably don't have any like massive aha moments. I feel like I've got lots and lots of like small aha moments, because we're always learning. And, I think probably one of the big ones was when and again, Sharon was a huge driver, thankfully, for this, which was we made that decision of going, do you know what, let's just do something that really different. Let's go for sort of try and get in terms of getting the right staff, let's offer a really great package, and let's try and really get people that really want to be the best.
Yeah, right.
Because the biggest thing at the time was financially, there was a lot to say it was not worth it,
Sure.
And we've all hired staff and paid them, well, and they haven't reciprocated, they haven't come to the party. So you can have a little bit of PTSD of like, I'm going to do all of that and they're not going to actually perform. So yeah, I think that has, for business owners, it's our biggest gripe. We always kind of say Jeepers staff are tricky. But at the flip side, when you've got the right staff, it's a game changer. So I think that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Of like, it was sort of like okay, like,
And it's worked.
we
Like,
did,
would you say in
and
reflection?
it's worked.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's the biggest
it's
risk.
worked.
Because, obviously there is a simple theory behind it. You pay more, you're going to get a better person in theory, and so you do that in that space. But sometimes it hasn't or doesn't work. But I guess for yourself, it has. And that's solidified that I guess, exploration of that idea. Are there any recruitment in itself is a massive topic. And I guess if we're speaking about it at this point, are there any sort of one or two tips that you could have with regards to ensuring that obviously, remuneration's got to be attractive, but what other things do you look for really briefly in that early stage of recruitment?
Look, I think definitely that old adage of you can train sort of skills, but you can't train behavior. So I think a lot of that, wanting to be the best, personal professional development, sharing our ethics, sharing our views, actually being pretty honest, like we said, like we will look after you, like we will reciprocate. You will not have worked anywhere like this, but at the same time, we ask a lot. Like we ask a lot. You will, not more than we ask on ourselves. Like it's still within reason, but we're paying you well, and we want to be the best, and we want you to be your best selves. And part of kind of working here is that there will be that expectation, and that's not for everyone. Like I think we had one person actually say like, "Oh, gee, it's a bit intense. That's a little bit intense." That's great, like because we want to be straight, right? In terms of reciprocal exchanges, like it's honest.
Yeah.
We will pay you really well, but we also expect you to kind of be the best, and so or strive to be the best.
Independent optometry has changed a lot over the last decade. How do you see independence evolving over the next few years?
I think we've, I mentioned earlier, I know we've chatted about it. I think this sort of the dynamic of the industry, you could see the changes happening about sort of 10, 15 years ago. And I don't know if it's like you said, there was the previous generation of owners kind of not really having to deal with these sorts of changes in the market, the dynamics in the market. But I think now people are sort of, like this podcast, like people are sort of now looking at, hey, what do we do differently? Like, how do we navigate optometry now and moving forward? So I think we're probably going to see more practices do a little bit more of the differentiating. The tricky part is that we're also now seeing corporate doing some of the differentiating, which is a little bit frustrating because, again, they're not doing, in my opinion, they're not doing the full service well. So for instance, my peer management. So, now you've got MyoSmarts in Specsavers. They're not measuring axial length, and they're not offering the other options. So those sorts of things can be quite frustrating when you're trying to actually look after someone to your best of your ability. So I think more independent practices, we're going to see more differentiating, but then at the same time, you're now also going to see corporate entities kind of differentiating. You're going to see independent practices invest a little bit more on more sophisticated equipment. Like let's say, like OCTs now are very, very common in independent optometry, but then, Specsavers first started off with free retinal photos, and then now they're doing free OCTs, so there's this constant sort of adaptation to kind of what next. 10 years from now, I think it's going to be, I don't want to sound doom and gloomy, but I think it's going to be the next decade's going to be pretty tough for independent optometry, in my opinion.
Right. Okay.
We are going to get the full hit of the consequences of the last 15 years of kind of being a little bit either naive or a little bit in denial about the impact of corporate optometry on our industry. Again, we've talked about it, like the push for example, undersupply of optometrists was just absolutely ridiculous back then. And even on like online forums, which are all independent optometrists, like they were sort of pretty happy with it. They had no issues with it. They believed it. And then now we've got kind of the opposite. I've got final year University of Melbourne come for placement that literally are like, cannot get a job in Melbourne. And that's only, increasing. And then at the same time, you have got big momentum in the corporate sector. And that momentum, they're not going to slow down.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge definitely in its own right. And I think being upfront and open about discussing it and working on it collaboratively, I think is an important aspect.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold my tongue a little bit because I don't want to piss anyone off. But quite frankly, like, this is always going to happen. And there's a part of me that's just like, we get what we deserve in regards to the industry. And there are a lot of structures higher up. I think there's, companies, there's media, there's universities, which are still happy with the way it's going because of the funding they get.
They're complicit. And I think you're speaking to a really independent topic here. And I get you 100%. And I definitely want to have a chat to you more about this probably after the episode's done, because there's a few things there that I'd like to sort of unpack with you. But for the context of obviously the conclusion now, as we start to wrap up, I mean, if you're advising an optometrist to open or to join or to be part of independent practice, what would be sort of one or two things that you'd be telling them to motivate them and to see the opportunity that does exist?
Yeah. So look, again, in full honesty, I think if you're opening a greenfield site right now, tough. As long as you can focus, as long as you're okay to battle those first couple of years, great, fantastic. But again, like it's a slog, like it's tough at the moment because of the competition. I would also, if you're opening a fresh store, I would try not to be too myopic in your thinking. So often when people open stores, the first thing they do is they bulk bill because they want patients, they need to pay bills. The problem is that you also need to sort of think about what customer you actually want, long term. Do you want to be bulk billing long term as an independent practice? And then people go, well, no, I'll bulk bill till I'm busy and then I'll implement charging. And I don't agree with that. I think it's better to like short-term pain, long-term gain, which is, there's going to be people you're going to lose earlier on, but then the people you do have, they're the ones you want to keep. And they're the ones that are going to, word of mouth, talk to other people. And hopefully you get the same people coming in and you're actually building the type of patient you want. I think if joining an independent practice, like awesome, like hell yeah, like would love it, would really encourage a younger optometrist to join an independent practice. Yeah, you might not get paid the same, but the job fulfillment, like being able for it to be a lot more personable, to be able to pick and choose a solution for your patient, like the job satisfaction aspect is a whole different level. And then it's an opportunity to kind of find your passion and then sort of, flame that fire of like, what is it about optometry that you love and be able to sort of, take it from like a job and turn it into like an actual career that you actually like really love and really get satisfaction out of. There's opportunities for, in the future, if you wanted to buy into an independent practice. I know most of independent owners are very open to sort of succession plans or, over time. So there's a lot of cool like opportunity. And there, as much as if you don't mind, because I was quite dim and gloomy about like, hey, I think the next 10 years are going to be tough. I think the ones that are doing all of this, the differentiating, are going to do well. I think it's the people that are on the fence, they're the ones that are going to have trouble because they're not mainstream corporate. They don't have that power, but they're not differentiating. And so they're the ones that it's going to be tough for. But if independents can, with young blood as well, if they can get a bit of energy, a bit of motivation, if they can kind of foster that differentiation, then actually, if anything, what I think will happen is, we're an audio podcast, so I won't use my hands, but I think there'll be a bit more of a divide. Corporate optometry will take up more market share, but then the independent optometrists that are left are going to be very different and be its own sort of protected sort of minority anyway, because those patients will always want those independent optometrists.
Final question. What's next for you? And I guess what's inspiring you and what's on the horizon, for Sho and the team there at Vision Camberwell?
I've always got things on the go, both business and professional. So yeah, I've got a few things on the go. Like from a clinical point of view, like we're working on our own scleral contact lens at the moment. We've done our own ortho K lens that we use in practice a lot.
Wow.
So we're developing that at the moment. Again, just pushing boundaries and seeing if we can do things better and different. But yeah, I want to keep that balance, keep that enjoying work but enjoying life aspect. But yeah, definitely always stimulated. Definitely got a few things on the horizon. So yeah, I guess watch the space.
As a true independent, I wanted to thank you for your time. It's been a really insightful conversation. I really appreciate the honesty that you brought to this and the perspective. I think as a true independent and as someone that understands the industry in the way that you do, I think you've been able to articulate things in a way that's relatable. And I think it's a full credit to yourself and what you've done there and your understanding. It's been great talking to you, and I really appreciate your time. And if people want to reach out to you to get some tips or advice, or maybe to pick up on a few of the things that you've discussed, are they able to? And if so, what's the best way that they can contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, my email is shonit@visioncamberwell.com.au. I'm also, on LinkedIn and Facebook, and they can contact Vision Camberwell as well. I'm always open for people to contact. I'm happy to help when I can. And at the same time, like I say to people, don't feel bad. Like if what you're asking is a bit too much, if I don't have the time or capacity, I'm very honest about it. I just say, hey, look, can't really offer that right now. So yeah, happy to help, happy for people to connect.
Sure. And those details will be in the show notes as well. But the show, it's been great chatting to you today, and I really appreciate your time and all your thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks for allowing me to contribute, and thanks for the chats. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for listening to The Focused View. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review, subscribe on your preferred podcast app, and share it with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals across Australia. For additional resources and downloads, visit thefocusedview.com.au. I'm Michael Nasser. Until next time, keep focused.